Chapter 561. Meanwhile, at the Grants' mansion, Tyler sat in the study, quietly poring over war strategy books. He gave each and every word on the page his undivided attention. Suddenly, there was a series of knocks on the door. "What is it?" Tyler asked without turning his head. "Mr. Grant, the big day has arrived, we should head out," an elderly voice said from outside the door. Tyler set the book down and got to his feet. After straightening his clothes, he opened the door and walked out. An aged servant stood outside the door, waiting for him with his head bowed. "How are the Harmons reacting?" Tyler asked with an indifferent look. "The Harmons haven't started preparing for the wedding yet. Instead, they're throwing a birthday party," the man replied. "Birthday party?" Tyler's mouth twitched. "Is that supposed to put pressure on me? How amusing. Mr. Grant, should we fetch the bride another day?" the man asked tentatively. "Since the engagement is today, it can't be changed." "We'll follow the schedule as planned," Tyler said coolly. "Also, find me a coffin and bring it straight to the Harmons' home." "A coffin?" The man was momentarily taken aback. "Mr. Grant, what do you want to do with that? Weren't they going to pick up the bride? What did the coffin have to do with it?" "The wedding carriage is to escort the bride, while the coffin is for bodies. If the Harmon family agrees to the marriage, I'll naturally use the carriage. If they don't, then I'll make them lay in the coffin," Tyler said apathetically. Upon hearing that, the man couldn't help but shudder. He knew that his master was always a man of his word. If the Harmon family didn't know what was good for them, they might end up completely destroyed. "Why are you still standing there? Go do as I say." Tyler gave him a sidelong glance. "Yes." Not daring to hesitate, the man immediately left. "HMPH, you want to play games with me? Well, let's see whether you can hold off my army." Tyler laughed coldly. He didn't mind the Harmons playing tricks, but in the face of absolute power, any wile would be for naught. At that moment, the Harmon estate was still bustling with excitement. Looking across the room, distinguished guests filled the seats. It was a gathering of the exalted. The wealthy and powerful exchanged toasts and chatted among themselves. Meanwhile, Dustin sat quietly in a corner, looking like an outsider. In contrast, Gordon, who was sitting at the other table, wouldn't stop greeting people. "Well, if it isn't Mr. Bowles. What a pleasure to see you. Oh, Ms. Pickens, you're here too. My father talks a lot about you. Ha ha ha, Mr. Solensky, what a surprise to run into you here. It must be fate. Let's grab a meal together sometime." Gordon stood, chatting and laughing with all the guests, showcasing his extensive network. "Gordon, was that Mr. Bowles, the famous jewel tycoon?" Zeke couldn't help but ask, curious. "That's right. Mr. Bowles has a net worth of several billions of dollars, and he owns half the jewels in Millsburg. He's a true titan in the industry." Gordon grinned. "No way. Gordon, you're really impressive. How did you get to know people of such high caliber?" Zoe asked with a look of admiration. "Billionaires weren't the kind of people you could meet just anywhere. Hey, not just Mr. Bowles, but Ms. Pickens is also no average Joe. She controls a substantial amount of mineral resources. You could say she's made of money. Also, there's Mr. Solensky. He's the son of an extremely wealthy man. He's got a bright future ahead of him and a lot of power." Gordon introduced each of them giddily, his face glowing with pride. "Gordon, who would have thought you'd been hiding this all along? I have to admit, it's amazing." Zeke gave him a thumbs up. "Exactly. You're probably the most spectacular one out of all of us," Zoe said, buttering him up. As she spoke, she even snuck a glance at Dustin and continued cynically, "Hey, Dustin, did you see that? This is the difference between you and Gordon. Not only is he rich, but he's also well connected. You'll never reach his level in your entire lifetime." Chapter 562. She's right. Zeke added. Rhys, here's a word of advice. You'd better leave Natasha as soon as possible, or you'd just be humiliating yourself. Dustin wasn't bothered enough to entertain them. He simply minded his own business, sipping at his drink. Yet, his lofty attitude pissed him off even more. HPMH, weren't you acting all cool earlier? Has the cat got your tongue? That's all you're good for, Zoe said with a cold laugh. To her, it was obvious that Dustin was feeling ashamed of himself. Let it go. Let him keep some of his dignity, or you'll back him into a corner, Gordon teased with a smile. Dustin was just a brute who knew a move or two, he really didn't think too highly of him. At that moment, Zoe seemed to have noticed something. She pointed at the door and asked, "Hey, who's that? He's really good looking and even has a certain air about him." The others turned their heads to look, and the gazes fell upon a handsome man walking inside, holding a folding fan. A faint smile adorned his face, and he carried an air of grace, each movement looked effortlessly elegant. Damn! Isn't that Patrick Hill, the son of the Hill family? Who would have thought that he'd show up too? Zeke couldn't help but gape at the sight of the man. Patrick Hill. Isn't that one of the renowned 10 princes of the South Province? Zoe's eyes widened. Yes, that's him. Zeke nodded. That's the top aristocrat of Millsburg. His status is even higher than Dylan's. Ha ha ha, this is great. Who would have thought we'd have the chance to see Mr. Hill here? We've really hit the jackpot today. Zoe's face lit up with excitement. The Hill family was one of the tremendous three. Their power and influence could overshadow the entire Harmony family from every aspect. Naturally, the son of the Hill family would be of honorable status. Guys, to tell you the truth, I'm pretty friendly with Patrick, Gordon piped up out of the blue. What? You actually know Mr. Hill? Zoe and the others' expressions changed. Of course. We even had a meal and played golf together, Gordon replied proudly. Last year, he had indeed bumped into Patrick at a golf course. However, their interaction had been limited to exchanging greetings, and that was the extent of it. What the hell, Gordon? You're amazing. You actually hit it off with Mr. Hill. Zeke said with envy. It's Gordon, after all. He's friends with everyone and can even get along with the most influential people. Zoe said with a look of excitement. Hearing the two of them praise him, Gordon felt as if he was walking on air. He loved being the center of attention. Look, Mr. Hill is making his way over. Zoe pointed at him joyfully. Gordon, is he here to see you? Well, only Gordon here knows Mr. Hill. Who else could it be? Let's get ready to greet him, Zeke said, getting excited himself. He's actually heading over here. Gordon paused briefly, taken aback. Although they had met each other before, they weren't particularly close. Could his moment of glory before this have refreshed Patrick's memory and kindled the desire to befriend him? The thought filled Gordon with joy. He quickly adjusted his tie and approached Patrick with a bright smile. Mr. Hill, it's been a while, he greeted, extending his hand. Huh. Patrick raised an eyebrow. Who are you? That single sentence turned Gordon to stone on the spot, his smile freezing on his face. Zoe and the others were also stunned and confused. Didn't he say that they were friends? What was going on? Without waiting for a response, Patrick simply brushed past Gordon. Clearly, he had no interest in entertaining them. To everyone's surprise, astonishment, and bewilderment, he approached Dustin and extended his hand with a smile. Dustin, we meet again. I'm really sorry about what happened before. I hope you can let it go. Chapter 563. What? Gordon and the others were dumbfounded by how politely and courteously Patrick had spoken to Dustin. Their eyes were round with disbelief. The son of the Hill family, one of the 10 princes of South Province, dubbed the top aristocrat, had actually greeted that jerk with a smile. How was that even possible? No way. Dustin knows Mr. Hill. The smile on Zoe's face turned to ice. She had initially thought that Patrick had walked over for Gordon. Never in her wildest dreams would she have thought that he was there for Dustin. Not to mention, from the way they were acting, it seemed like they were close. How the hell did that punk climb his way up to become friends with Mr. Hill? Shock aside, Zeke was more jealous than anything. What right did a loser have to hit it off with the top aristocrat? How could this be? Gordon was rooted to the spot, astonishment written on his face. It was one thing to be ignored by Patrick, but he couldn't come to terms with how the person he had to suck up to was so polite to Dustin. Wasn't Dustin just a country doctor? How did he get acquainted with a big shot of this caliber? It seems like there's more to Natasha's boyfriend than meets the eye, Adriana muttered to herself as she observed everything from a distance. Curiosity sparked in her eyes. Mr. Hill, it's in the past. Further, it had nothing to do with you, Dustin answered lightly. The Hill family had already personally apologized for beating Edmund up, and Torben had also already paid the price. It would do no one any good to keep dredging things up. Dustin, you're truly magnanimous. My grandfather greatly admires stand-up men like you. If you have time, I'd love to host you at my home. Patrick extended the invite with a smile. Sure. When I have time, I'll definitely pay Sir Hill a visit, Dustin replied, nodding lightly. He deeply respected the Hill family patriarch, Paul, not just for his power but also for his sense of justice, his willingness to help the needy, and his ability to separate kindness and hatred. Mr. Hill, it's an honor to have you here, especially since you came from afar. At that moment, Kate approached them. With a slight smile, she continued, you're an honored guest, so it's only fitting that you occupy the seat of honor. Please follow me. No. Thank you. I'll sit here. Patrick politely declined with a smile before taking a seat next to Dustin. Seeing this, Kate's smile stiffened slightly, but she quickly regained her composure. Of course, Mr. Hill. Please feel free to let me know if you need anything at any time. She didn't push him. After giving him a final smile, she turned around and returned to her seat. Before she walked away, however, she gave Dustin an inscrutable glance. Just who is Dustin? How can he get on so well with Mr. Hill? Zoe's expression turned strange as she watched the two men chatting and smiling at the next table. HMPH, what's so impressive about that? Zeke said, his voice dripping with jealousy. To me, he's just riding on Natasha's coattails. Otherwise, why would Mr. Hill hold him in such high regard? You're right. Gordon nodded in agreement. Mr. Hill is on a different level. If it wasn't out of respect for the daughter of the Harmon family, would he give a loser like Dustin the time of day? So that's what it is. Zoe suddenly had an epiphany. Disdain colored her face as she said, I actually thought he was kind of impressive, but in the end, he's just relying on his rich girlfriend to climb up. Men like him will always struggle to reach the higher circles. The three of them took turns belittling Dustin. The way they saw it, it must be because Natasha was close friends with Patrick, and as the gigolo, Dustin was merely riding on her coattails. All of a sudden, their moods improved. Time slowly ticked by, and the party finally kicked off. After all the guests took their seats, Hector, the birthday celebrant, raised his glass and stood. In a booming voice, he said, Welcome, dear friends, to my birthday celebration. I'm extremely honored. I hope you'll enjoy the food and drink to your heart's content. Chapter 564. Now, I'd like to propose a toast. Hector raised his glass, swept his gaze over all the quests, and downed his drink. In response, everyone stood and raised the glass to toast in return. After some small talk, it was time for the gift-giving segment. Mr. Harmon, here are some golden horses that I forged with my own hands. I wish you nothing but success in life. Mr. Harmon, this crystal necklace once belonged to an ancient king. I hope you like it. Mr. Harmon, this painting is an authentic masterpiece by Picasso. It's truly a priceless treasure. That being said, I wish you the best of health and a lifetime full of smiles ahead. One by one, the guests stepped up with the gifts in hand, offering their heartfelt birthday wishes. There were numerous rich and respected people among them, and this gift-giving segment was also a subtle display of comparison and competition. The one with the rarest and most expensive gift got to show off. They could display their power and foster closer connections with the Harmons. Thus, each gift, consisting of precious treasures or rare items, was carefully chosen. Not to mention, a lot of them couldn't be bought with money alone. Thank you, everyone, for your kind thoughts. Hector smiled, responding to all the people who had presented him with a gift. As the room was filled with a joyous atmosphere, a loud voice suddenly rang out, "The Grant family has arrived." Instantly, all eyes turned toward the entrance. Under everyone's gaze, a tall, handsome man strutted in with huge strides with a servant in tow. His face was cold, and his gaze was razor sharp. He gave off a terrifying aura. His entire body was radiating with an intense desire to kill. All the guests shuddered, not daring to face him directly. Tyler Grant. It's actually Tyler Grant. Oh my God. Who would have thought that the Harmons were so respected? Even General Lionheart, Tyler Grant, personally showed up to celebrate. When the guests caught sight of the newcomer, they instantly burst into chatter. Who in the South Province didn't know Tyler's name? He was widely regarded as a legendary figure. He hadn't even hit 30 yet, but he was already fraternizing with the high-ranking officials and commanded a massive army. In the entire South Province, he was the best of the best. No one could come close to him, leaving any other genius in his shadow. For someone like him, no matter where he went, everyone kissed the ground he walked on. As expected of the #1 prodigy of the South Province and the top of the 10 princes. He's so handsome. Zoe's eyes sparkled, and her heart began to flutter. In front of Tyler, Dylan and Patrick weren't even worth mentioning. The man before them was the true prince. He's finally here. Natasha narrowed her eyes slightly as her pretty face turned serious. She knew that this matter had to end today. Tyler, now that you're here, please take a seat. Hector stood up to welcome him, smiling as though nothing had happened. No need, Tyler responded with indifference. I came here today not to celebrate your birthday but to claim my bride. I want to marry Natasha Hammond. As he spoke, he made a few gestures with his hands. With that, 8 people carried a large red carriage into the room. Chapter 565. What's going on? The crowd glanced at each other and broke out in whispers at the sight of the wedding carriage being brought in. Wasn't it Hector's 50th birthday? It seemed like Tyler was deliberately stirring up trouble. Tyler, what's the meaning of this? Hector's smile gradually disappeared. He didn't expect Tyler to cut straight to the chase right after his arrival. He was truly relentless. In accordance with our marriage contract, I'm picking up my bride today, Tyler stated calmly. Marriage contract. Bride. It can't be. Tyler and Natasha are engaged. They're both talented and good-looking, so it's not surprising for them to be betrothed. However, this manner of retrieving the bride seems rather abrupt. The crowd was buzzing in surprise, confusion, jealousy, and curiosity. Picking up the bride at a birthday party was an unprecedented move. Hector stayed calm and composed. Tyler, we'll discuss the details of the marriage agreement later on. It's my birthday celebration today, so I would appreciate a little consideration. That won't do, and nobody can change my mind. Tyler refused immediately without hesitation. Since I've come today, I must take her away. Natasha, please get on. As soon as he said that, the crowd was in an uproar. Nobody had anticipated Tyler to be that domineering. He was not only inconsiderate, he was also kidnapping the bride. This hardly resembled a conventional bride pickup. It was a forced marriage. Aren't you going too far, Tyler? Hector's expression turned cold. Marriage has always been a matter of mutual consent. Aren't you afraid of public ridicule by resorting to force? I have always acted without concern for others' opinions. Today, whether through invitation or coercion, I will marry her. Tyler raised his voice. What if my daughter won't get married? Hector frowned slightly. She won't get married. Tyler's lips twitched, and he snapped his fingers. Very soon, a large, black coffin was carried in by 8 people. With a loud thud, they placed it down so that it was in line with the carriage and also pointed at Hector. Tyler stood in the middle, the coffin on his left, and the carriage on his right. The difference in colors was striking. These are my presents. With an expressionless face, he declared, you have 2 choices. Either Natasha gets on the carriage, or you're going to lay down in this coffin on your own. The audacity. How dare you? Tyler Grant, you're crossing the line. The Harmons protested in righteous indignation at the sight. Gifting a coffin at a birthday party was a blatant insult and provocation. Damn it. He's too much. He's totally disrespecting the Harmons. Though he may be domineering, he undeniably can afford to act that way. It seems like trouble is looming for the Harmons. Although many were upset with his behavior, nobody dared to voice it out openly. That was because no one dared to make an enemy out of the Grants. Tyler, are you truly intending to have a fallout with us Harmons in the presence of all my esteemed guests? Hector frowned. I told you. You have 2 choices. Either Natasha marries me, or you die. Tyler stood with his hands behind his back, a look of arrogance on his face, showing complete disregard for the crowd. What insolence! Chapter 566. At that moment, Dylan suddenly shot up as he slammed the table. He bellowed, Tyler Grant, don't think you can act as you please just because you have some talent. We're not easy targets. Who are you? Do you have the right to talk to me? Tyler gave him a cold glance. HMPH. Listen up. Dylan straightened his chest and held his head up high. My name is Dylan Harmon. I'm currently a high-ranking commander of the Dark Panther Cavalry. I've fought over a dozen wars and slain hundreds of men. A mere commander is challenging me. Where did you get your courage? You're not even a deputy general. Tyler spoke indifferently. Even though I'm only a commander, Scarlet Spanner is my general. I don't believe you'd dare challenge the goddess of war. Dylan responded, arrogantly. Scarlet Spanner. Tyler frowned slightly, finally betraying a hint of emotion. As Dragonmarsh's first goddess of war, Scarlet had not only achieved incredible feats, she came from an influential background and possessed unparalleled martial skills. He indeed considered himself inferior to her. However, that was only for now. He was confident of surpassing her within 10 years. What? Are you afraid? Dylan was pleased. Are your legs weak just by hearing her name? Let me tell you. Don't think you can look down on people just because of your little achievements. Just so you know, the world is a big place, and there are many people better than you out there. As soon as he said that, the Harmons clapped in agreement. Nicely said. So what if he's General Lionheart? He still needs to bow down to the goddess of war. Ha! You must feel ashamed now after acting so outrageously, huh? Seeing Tyler being humiliated, the Harmons were filled with renewed spirits, coming out of their distress. He's indeed my son. He managed to put Tyler in his place with a few words. Standing in the front rows, Jacob had a proud look on his face. As his son stood in the limelight, he also basked in the glory. That's right. Without Dylan here today, nobody would have been able to go up against Tyler Trent and flashed a wide smile. A few other older Harmon family members were also filled with awe. With a son like him, the Harmons would be elevated to a higher standing. For a moment, Dylan became the center of attention, incomparable to anyone else. Everyone present thought highly of him. Hey! What are you still standing there for? Take your men and leave immediately. Don't disrupt the party. Dylan stepped forward and gestured with his chin, a look of arrogance on his face. A talented genius. General Lionheart. In the end, he still ended up stepping all over Tyler. Chapter 566. Suddenly, Tyler dissolved into laughter. Do you think you can scare me by using Scarlet's name? What? Aren't you going to show deference to the goddess of war? Dylan rebukes sharply. Scarlet Spanner is different from you. You're nothing but her dog. What makes you think you can show off here? Tyler sneered. Why you dare humiliate me? Dylan's expression darkened. So what if I do? Get lost before I slice your head off. Tyler exclaimed. Dylan erupted in fury. You're seeking death. He stepped lightly, launching a powerful punch as he shot forward. He knew Tyler was a formidable opponent and had exerted all his strength into the punch. He planned on striking first and ending the fight with a single blow. Dylan, no. Hector's expression shifted as he tried to stop him, but it was too late. What a fool. In the face of Dylan's attack, Tyler only looked at him in contempt. With a simple point of the finger, he struck Dylan's chest. A muffled explosion was heard as Dylan flew a good 30 feet back before crashing on the floor. It was as if he was hit by a truck. For a moment, he turned pale and spat out blood. Chapter 567. What? The crowd was shocked as they took in Dylan's seriously injured figure laying on the ground. Nobody expected Tyler to defeat a high-ranking commander of the Dark Panther Cavalry with just a finger. He was too powerful. The concerning thing was that Dylan had Scarlet backing him. When Tyler injured Dylan in public, it was akin to slapping Scarlet. The crowd wondered if he was just tyrannically arrogant or fearlessly confident. How dare you injure one of us? Do you really think we're easy targets? After recovering from the shock, the Harmons shot up in anger. They could no longer tolerate being bullied to such an extent. Tyler Grant. I am a commander of the Dark Panther Cavalry. If you hurt me, Scarlet will never forgive. Dylan struggling to stand up, feeling shock and anger. Gifted with extraordinary talents and sharp perceptions since he was a child, he had trained into a divine-level martial artist at a young age. Armed with the abilities he was proud of, he never expected to turn out that weak against Tyler. It appears like you haven't figured out where you stand. Tyler looked at him in contempt. I'd naturally give deference to Scarlet if she were here. But what are you? You're just a worthless piece of trash hiding behind someone else's power. How dare you threaten me? Not to mention, the Dark Panther Cavalry has 200,000 troops, and over 100 of them are high-ranking commanders. With Scarlet's position, she probably doesn't even know who you are. What makes you think you can flaunt your power here? Dylan's expression shifted with his words. He couldn't believe Tyler saw through him. He was indeed a high-ranking commander of the Dark Panther Cavalry. However, he wasn't even qualified to meet Scarlet on a typical day. As part of the Dark Panther Cavalry, he had gotten used to using Scarlet's name to boast. No matter where he went, he could act as he pleased. However, he hadn't anticipated encountering such a difficult person like Tyler today. He couldn't win against him in a fight and failed to intimidate him. For a moment, he was at a loss. Why are you silent? Have I hit the mark? What useless trash. Tyler shook his head in disdain. See, cut the crap. I'm her trusted aide. Dylan yelled as he hid his cowardice. He could only continue the act for now. Trusted aide. The corner of Tyler's lips curved up into a smile. All right, I'll give you a chance. I'll let the Harmons go if you can get Scarlet to come here. She's stationed at the border. How can she just come here at will? Dylan yelled. She doesn't have to show up, then. Give her a call. If the line connects, I'll consider it a win. Tyler settled on a compromise. Dylan's expression froze. With his status, he couldn't even interact with Scarlet, let alone have her personal contact information. Dylan, stop holding back. Just give her a call. I'd like to see if Tyler would still dare stir up trouble, Jacob said in discontent. That's right, show him the power of Dragonmarsh's goddess of war. The Harmons started clamoring. They knew asking her to appear would be difficult, but making a call would be easy. After all, Dylan was a high-ranking commander. He would definitely be taken seriously. Fine. I'll make the call. Realizing that he couldn't avoid it, Dylan immediately took out his phone and started his act of needing help. Don't try to tell me that Scarlett is too busy and can't answer your call, Tyler interrupted him coldly. Dylan turned red as he was caught off guard by his words. He was indeed about to make an excuse to deceive him. After being exposed, he stood there dumbfounded. What's the matter? It's not connecting. Tyler grew impatient. The goddess of war is extremely busy with work, so it's expected for her to not pick up. I'll try again later, Dylan bit the bullet. Stop acting. Get lost. Chapter 568. Tyler stomped on the ground heavily, causing a violent surge of energy to strike Dylan. Dylan staggered backward from the impact, spitting out another mouthful of blood. You. He gritted his teeth, not daring to utter another sound. He knew he had been completely defeated. Tyler, you are too much. Jacob erupted in fury at the sight of his son injured once again. Cut the crap. Make a choice, the carriage or the coffin. With his hands behind his back, Tyler gave off an imposing air. Tyler Grant. Do you think you can suppress the entire Harmon family alone? You're absolutely crazy. Jacob retorted angrily. Who said I'm alone? Tyler raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Come in. On his orders, the sound of synchronized marching could be heard by the door. As they approached, the noise grew louder. Even the liquids on the table rippled slightly. To everyone's astonishment, following the sound was a group of black-clad, masked, and fully armed guards striding in with confidence. The guards were tall and muscular with sharp gazes and carried a strong presence. They looked like they had gone through numerous bloodshed, a clear indication of them being seasoned fighters. Their presence subdued the crowd, and the number of dark barrels especially left them feeling terrified. Huh. The Harmon's expression shifted at the sight. Nobody expected Tyler to deploy a group of armed guards as backup on the day to pick up his bride. It was a terrifying sight to behold. Whoever is unhappy can step forward. Tyler scanned his surroundings, looking at the crowd in arrogance and contempt. Anyone that met his gaze dropped their heads unwittingly. Who would dare step out when the armed guards have appeared? They would be seeking their own demise. Hector frowned slightly, upset. The thing he feared the most had happened at last. This guy is truly outrageous. Jacob and the rest of the Harmons gritted their teeth, but there was nothing they could do. Today seemed like the day the Harmons would face the greatest calamity. Oh my God, that's how General Lionheart is. He's too much for deploying the armed guards for a small disagreement. Looking at the current situation, it seems like the Harmons are in for a rough time today. Either submit or be suppressed. I wonder what the Harmons would choose. The guests whispered and discussed among themselves. They truly hadn't anticipated a birthday celebration to turn into a forced marriage scene. Natasha Harmon, nobody can help you today. You are destined to be my woman. Let's go. Tyler walked up, his gaze threatening. When he moved, the armed guards followed. His menacing demeanor made the Harmons turn pale as they trembled in fear. Just when everyone thought Natasha would be taken by force, a tall figure blocked Tyler's path, standing right before him with a cutting gaze. Have you asked me before taking her away? Chapter 569. Have you asked me for permission before taking her away? Dustin stood in front of Tyler, blocking his path. He had a frosty expression as he stood unyielding. Huh. The guests were dumbfounded and in shock. They could not believe someone would dare to challenge Tyler. This person must have had nerves of steel. Zoe's eyes widened in surprise. What's Dustin doing up front? Doesn't he value his life? Even if they disregarded Tyler's background, the armed guards behind him were terrifying enough. Zeke sneered. HMPH, he must have a death wish to challenge General Lionheart. Tyler commanded the armed guards with an air of dominance. With just a single command, he could have Dustin shot into oblivion. Fool. He thinks he can show off in front of Tyler just because he's friends with Patrick. What a joke. Gordon looked like he was looking at a corpse. While Patrick held a high social standing, he had no official position. He was absolutely incomparable to Tyler. This is spelling trouble. Adriana frowned slightly. Even though she admired Dustin's courage in standing up for the woman he loved, it was too dangerous in this situation. You dare stop me? With his hands still behind his back, Tyler sized him up. His chilling gaze fixed on him, like that of a predator locking onto his prey. Why not? Natasha has every right to refuse to marry you. I won't allow you to force her to marry you in public, Dustin stated calmly. You won't agree. Tyler raised an eyebrow. So what? Do you really think you can stop me? You can try. But I strongly advise against it. Otherwise, I'll beat the shit out of you, Dustin spat, word for word. What? The guests erupted in an uproar at his words. Damn. Is this kid insane? He's incredibly daring. He's too brave for his own good. He's openly challenging General Lionheart. He must have a death wish. The guests broke out into a discussion, with Dustin appearing like an idiot to them. Even the Harmons were pressured into silence at Tyler's appearance. Where did this insignificant kid get the courage to act so boldly in front of such an influential figure? HMPH. What an idiot. Dylan sneered. He wasn't a match for Tyler, let alone that loser Dustin. He has commendable courage. Sadly, he won't be living for long. Kate rejoiced in his misfortune. She had always disliked Dustin, especially considering her brother's death had something to do with him. That was why she desperately wished for a tragedy to befall him. Hector, you didn't plan this, did you? What can an insignificant brat like him accomplish? Trent was frustrated. Dustin was only making things worse by challenging Tyler. Hector's brows were locked in a frown as he remained silent. The time was not right, and he had to keep waiting. Chapter 569. Natasha, on the other hand, sat beside him in worry, at a loss for words. In the face of his boastful statement, Tyler let out a chuckle. Do you know what you just said? No matter what I said, I've given you a warning. So stop whatever you're planning. Don't make me hit you. Dustin's expression was unwavering. You've got balls. Tyler nodded. I admire your bravery. Sadly, you're not qualified to play the hero in front of me. I'll give you 3 seconds. Get lost. Or die. The armed guards behind him raised the guns at his words, rows of gun barrels aimed directly at every part of Dustin. They would immediately shoot their target into oblivion upon their general's orders. Hold it. Stop right there. Chapter 570. Seeing that Tyler was serious, Natasha and Patrick stood up and stopped him. Tyler, speak and behave as you wish, but he is my friend. You better not act recklessly. Patrick stepped forward and stood shoulder to shoulder with Dustin, clearly taking his side. His actions shocked many. It finally dawned on him why Dustin acted without restraint. He had someone backing him. Patrick, no one can stop me from killing my target, not even you. Tyler's expression remained cold, not showing any sign of yielding. A rich playboy was nothing in his eyes. There's no reason to go that far. You should forgive sometimes. Patrick frowned slightly. Tyler spat out, get lost. My bullets don't discriminate. You. Patrick's expression darkened. Even though they were both sons of affluent families, he could never compare to Tyler in terms of status and authority. If Tyler decided to use force, he would be powerless to stop him. Mr. Grant, why are you so angry? Can't things be discussed nicely at a table? At that moment, a middle-aged man dressed in luxurious clothing walked in with his head held high. Hey, isn't that Roderick, Big Bucks Brooks? I can't believe he's here. The crowd gasped silently in shock. As the person who controlled the economy in Millsburg, Roderick was undoubtedly the wealthiest man there. His words carried immense weight in the business world, and he commanded deep respect from everyone. As he walked in, he naturally took a spot beside Dustin, clearly expressing his stance. What? Are you going against me too? Tyler gave him the side eye. Roderick responded calmly, I wouldn't dare. I simply hope Mr. Grant could mitigate the circumstances. And if I don't, I may need to reconsider my annual donation of $1 billion for your military spending. Roderick flashed a smile. Ha! A lowly businessman is threatening me. Beat it, or I'll kill you too. Tyler's face grew cold. He was getting impatient. What was going on today? Why were all these mediocre people bravely acting up against him? I wouldn't expect anything less from General Lionheart. You sure are mighty. Suddenly, a commanding voice was heard by the door. Everyone turned their attention toward the sound and saw a middle-aged man in an army uniform adorned with stars, indicating his high rank. He strode confidently with a group of armed guards following behind him. The hell? That's Sir Moran. What brings such an influential figure here? The crowd buzzed with excitement at his appearance, curious and astonished expressions filling their faces. Sir Moran was a lieutenant general. He controlled nearly half of the army in the southern province. In terms of official rank, he stood half a notch higher than Tyler, who was only a major general. He sat at the top of the southern province. The unexpected presence of a high-ranking official left everyone wondering, as it was a rare sight to witness him gracing any event. Keith Moran. Tyler frowned slightly, seemingly surprised. He didn't expect the Harmons to have the influence to bring forth Southern Province's regional deputy chief. He's finally here. Hector couldn't conceal his joy as the tension in his forehead gradually eased. Hector had bided his time in silence, waiting for the opportune moment. He had reached out to Keith a few days ago, uncertain if he would stand up for the Harmons. Seeing him arrive, Hector was relieved. With Keith Moran as the regional deputy chief in attendance, Tyler wouldn't be able to act as he pleased. This was Hector's trump card.